Welcome back. For those who are just joining us, this is part 3 of a 3-part horror series based around a story called The Shadow Behind the Door. Links to parts 1 and 2 will be provided below so you can catch up if you have UNT already. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, then please do stay tuned for more updates. But without further ado, let's begin. Part 3, The Shadow's Vow. Just before we begin, I would like to apologize for any inconvenience caused by the sound quality or audio levels. This video is being recorded at a different location due to unforeseen circumstances, and I'm still in the process of getting used to the new space. So thanks for your understanding, and I hope that the rest of the video makes up for any disappointment that may have caused. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the last thing you heard. Our protagonist had just seen the reflection of his cousin grabbed by a giant black hand through the antique mirror. Let's see what happens next. As the mirror shattered violently, showering shards across the room, the last piece broke off, revealing a ghastly sight behind it. The black hand had latched onto his cousin's arm and was dragging him towards the wall. Blood poured out of the cut on his hand, soaking into the floorboards. But as quickly as he'd been pulled into the mirror, he disappeared. Our cousin stumbled backwards, knocking over a chair in his haste to get away. His eyes were wide with terror as he stared at the spot where his reflection had stood only moments before. He could hear the floorboards creaking in time with a heartbeat, pulsing beneath his feet like a bass drum. Then a voice whispered from somewhere underneath the house, raspy and ancient, "Blood awakens me." The mere sound of it set his teeth on edge. Backing away slowly, he glanced around for an escape, but there wasn't one. No matter which way he turned, the antique furniture loomed like silent sentinels, their presence heavy with untold secrets. As he continued to retreat, he noticed something peculiar about the floor. It seemed to ripple and shift beneath his feet. Then, under the stairwell, he saw it, a single floorboard that didn't quite fit. It was slightly loose and revealed a dark void beneath. With shaking hands, he pushed it open and peered into the darkness. "Hello." His voice echoed in the silence, bouncing back distorted and strange. There was no reply, only the distant pounding of his own heart. Hesitantly, he reached out and touched the rough wood. It felt cold, as though it had been damp for a long time. But when he looked back, he realized that he wasn't standing in front of the mirror anymore. Instead, he was in a narrow passage that led down into the earth. Before him stretched a tunnel carved into the very bones of the house, its walls adorned with the creepiest of graffiti, claw marks that scraped across the wood like a madman's fingernails. And although he knew he should turn back, curiosity overwhelmed him. He followed the passage down until it opened up into a small underground room. Dust motes danced in the single beam of sunlight that sliced through a crack in the ceiling. In the center of the room sat a wooden chest, its surface covered in faded velvet. On top lay a stack of old yellowed papers bound together with a leather cord. As he brushed away the dust, he found that they were portraits of his ancestors, each face contorted in a silent scream. Their eyes, however, were the most disturbing. They'd been scratched out, leaving gaping holes that stared back at him accusingly. It was then that he noticed the words scrawled across the back of the portrait. "Beware the shadow. It hungers still. Only fire can sever the bond." Could this be the source of the haunting? Was the ghost of his ancestors' betrayer still trapped within these four walls? With trembling hands, he reached for the wooden chest. Inside lay an even older parchment, its edges crumbling at his touch. Unfurling it carefully, he saw that it depicted a beautiful woman with flowing hair and kind eyes. Beneath it, the inscription read, "This is Eleanor Blackwood, the Shadow. Once a bride-to-be, she was betrayed on her wedding day and left to die. In her rage, she swore vengeance on the entire family, binding her soul to the wooden door of the Blackwood Manor, so that even in death she may haunt them." His blood ran cold. The legend spoke of an ancient vow made by a scorned woman, a vow that had somehow survived the test of time. According to the parchment, the shadow had been banished from the mortal plane, but it could return if anyone other than a Blackwood were to lay eyes on the mirror. And judging by the scratches on the portraits, it seems that no one had listened to the warning. The final words on the scroll chilled him to the bone. "Only fire can sever the bond." What did that mean? And how could he break the vow before it was too late? Suddenly, he heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone was coming. Panicked, he stuffed the parchment into his pocket and raced back the way he'd come. Scrambling up the stairs, he burst through the trapdoor and into the living room, slamming it shut behind him. just as he heard heavy footsteps pounding up the stairs. He didn't stop running until he reached the front door. Bursting through it, he stumbled onto the overgrown path, making a mad dash for the safety of the road. As he turned to look back, he could have sworn he saw the wooden door from the other room standing upright in the middle of the living room, bathed in moonlight. And then he heard it. Knocking began again, louder, faster, more desperate. And so he fled, stumbling blindly through the darkness, the sound of the knocking echoing in his ears. Finally, collapsing on the ground beside the road, he looked back toward the manor, its silhouette looming like a monster against the night sky. Then he noticed something strange. The knocking had stopped. Had the shadow given up the chase? Or was it planning its next move? He decided he'd had enough. Whatever was happening in that house, he didn't want to be a part of it. Quickly, he got to his feet and walked away, hoping that he'd never have to set foot in that cursed place again. Back at the manor, the wind howled like a wounded animal, rattling the windows in their frames. Inside, the air grew colder, frost creeping across the floor. The wooden door leaned against the wall, as though waiting for something. Suddenly, it straightened, its surface gleaming faintly in the moonlight. And then it began to move. Inch by inch, it slid across the floor, gliding silently toward the broken mirror. As it approached, the shards swirled and coalesced, reforming the broken glass into one perfect sheet once more. The door stopped directly in front of it, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then it began to rise, floating upward until it reached the glass. And as it touched the mirror, the world beyond shifted and changed. The room seemed to warp and twist, the wallpaper peeling away to reveal bare, rotting wood. The air crackled with energy, and then a figure began to emerge from the mirror, a tall, gaunt woman with skin like ice and eyes that burned like hot coals. She stepped out of the mirror and onto the floor, her gaze fixed on the wooden door behind her. As she approached, the temperature dropped dramatically, frost forming on the windows. She reached out a hand, her fingers long and bony, and knocked 3 times. Then a voice, raspy and cold as winter, echoed through the room. "Let me in, let me in, let me in." But no one answered. The woman knocked again, louder this time, and waited. Still, no one came. Her eyes narrowed, and with a snarl, she threw herself against the door. The knocking grew frantic, desperate. "Let me in, let me in, let me in." And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The woman slumped to the ground, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "Why won't you let me in? I just want to say goodbye." There was a long silence. Then the door creaked open, revealing a sliver of light. She looked up, her eyes wide with hope. "Please," she whispered. "I promise I won't hurt you." But before she could react, a hand shot out and clamped over her mouth. She struggled, but it was no use. The hand was like a vice, squeezing the breath out of her. She thrashed wildly, trying to free herself, but it was too late. Her vision blurred, and with a final shudder, she collapsed to the ground, her body dissolving into a cloud of black smoke. The smoke rose and swirled, taking the shape of a tall, imposing man. His eyes glowed faintly red in the darkness. He turned and walked toward the mirror, disappearing into its depths. Meanwhile, our protagonist was fast asleep in his bed, oblivious to the danger that was lurking just outside his window. Suddenly, he jolted upright in bed, his heart pounding in his chest. He could have sworn he heard a voice whispering his name. He shook off the feeling, attributing it to a vivid dream. But as he got out of bed, he noticed something strange. His reflection in the mirror was smiling. But when he turned to face the mirror, his own face betrayed no such emotion. Confused, he stared back at the mirror, trying to make sense of the image before him. But as he did, his reflection vanished, replaced by an ominous blackness that seemed to consume everything in its path. He watched in horror as the darkness spread across the mirror, inching closer and closer. With a jolt, he realized that his own face had become pale and lifeless, devoid of any joy or warmth. The smile was gone, replaced by a chilling emptiness. As the darkness enveloped him completely, he felt a cold hand grip his shoulder, turning him to face the encroaching shadows. And as the last vestiges of light faded from his eyes, he heard a voice whisper in his ear, "Now, I walk again." And with that, he was gone, consumed by the darkness. And so the vow was complete. So there you have it, the conclusion of The Shadow Behind the Door. How did you think it ended? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, then please do leave a like and subscribe to stay updated on future uploads. Until next time, my friends, remember to take care of yourselves.